I mentioned earlier. Emotions are just not out there. You're not born with the emotional content in the emotional part of the brain, if there's such a thing. You know, where they measure the activity when you're emoting. You're not born with those. Those develop with you. And you know, it would be great, it would be wonderful if all our emotions completely coincided with our rational thinking. Conscious rational thinking. And many of our emotions do. I mean, we feel joy when really joyous things happen, when we rationally think something's good. You know, once in a while, our emotions and our rational thoughts are not aligned. For some people, they're not aligned. This is not true for everybody. It's a lot has to do with the kind of thinking. I don't have that phenomenon with critics. I don't feel that, you know, it doesn't, whatever the marketing is, doesn't work on me, for example. And there are lots of others it doesn't. If there is a mismatch between somebody's emotions and their rational thinking, they need to do more thinking. They need to be able to control their emotions. This is why our ethic is about thinking, about being rational, about not acting on whim, just acting on your emotion, but figuring out, is this truly in my best interest? Is buying this iPhone just a whim, just because I feel like it, just because my emotional side of the brain is telling me to do it? Or is it truly something I need, want, benefit my life, make my life better? That's what we have a rational faculty for. So it is, we say reason is the way you make decisions in life. It's not based on those emotions, because emotions can be wrong in that sense. They can be hurtful to your long-term goal of pursuing life. That's not to say suppress your emotions. It's not to say you live to be happy. Happiness is expressed through emotion. We all want those emotions. They're very helpful. But they're not tools of cognition. They're not the way we make decisions about things in life, particularly a lot of important things. So we need to teach people that they should think first. You know, it's again, it's a matter of education. When you have an educational system like we do in our public schools today, which is instant gratification, now, don't think, just memorize or just spout out whatever you feel like, right? All opinions are equal. If you think 1 plus 1 equals 3, just tell us. We want to hear what you have to feel. Then you're teaching people to focus on not thinking, and therefore their emotions are going to be screwed up. They're going to follow those screwed up emotions.
I wanted to follow your credit card example, and I totally agree with what Ron said, but let's assume that banks are in that regard. It would be irrational for banks to extend credit to you who could pay back. And it's interesting how irrationally bankers acted, believing they were rational. This is I guess, a trick of thinking. And it was what really led to a lot of problems in the credit card business was what was mathematical model. And they had these models that made assumptions in them that were very rationalistic. And this is another form of thinking area there, in addition to what I call emotionalism, almost a religious belief in mathematics. Now, mathematics is a tool, but there are lots of things that are not mathematical, including human behavior, which is why all the Federal Reserve mathematical models failed. They did not predict this crash, right? I mean, they had these massive computer systems, and back to the point earlier about them believing they were God and what people ought to be doing, they did it driven by these systems. A lot of these credit card systems were driven by mathematical models that were on a superficial level rational. And this goes back to the very question of thinking requires holding the contents. And I'll even make an analogy with that with charity. A lot of people, as Yaron described, charity is a very secondary consideration in objectivist philosophy, but it's not no consideration. I personally am very supportive of the United Way, because I wouldn't really live in the kind of community that would exist if there were no United Way. I think it would be really bad for me and for my children. So I consistently give to the United Way, because acting in your rational self-interest requires that you hold the context. And the context is, what kind of life do I want to live? What kind of life do I want my children to live? And how can I impact that context? And the same thing would be for bankers who think rationally they don't want to extend credit, even they make a profit in the short term. The people that won't pay it back in the long term, because it'll come back to home. And that requires a kind of different thinking. It's not just, it's a holding the broad context. And that's to me, one of Reagan's geniuses, is that so many people think about linear things. She kind of integrated all this stuff in a big picture together and said, what are the other implications when we start thinking
free market. The bankers who are short-term, the bankers don't think about these people need to be paid the loans. Go out of business. They don't get bailed out. They go out of business. And the good bankers, the bankers who are smart, who think long-term, grow.
I'll give you a concrete example. That Citigroup in my career has gone broke 3 times. And every time they got bigger and worse. And we certainly made our mistake. We were much more cautious in the credit card business. We can gain market share now. The Citigroup ought to be out of business. We ought to have a huge growth in credit card, but the government's keeping them in business. And I guarantee you, 5 years from now, they'll be doing the same stupid stuff.
So you reinforce bad behavior, you reward, you penalize good behavior.
Would you comment on the potential that a lot of Americans are confusing capitalism and corruption?
Yes, I mean, Americans definitely confuse capitalism with corruption. They confuse capitalism with Willie Madoff. They confuse capitalism with what happened with Enron. And I think that the reason they do that goes back to the point I was trying to make about the moral standard that we hold. When we called somebody in the playground when we were in school selfish, what did we mean? Do we mean a good guy who's taking care of himself rationally for the long term? No. When we pointed at somebody and said, you're selfish, we meant you're backstabbing, lying, cheating SOB. Who doesn't care about anybody, who will do whatever it takes to get whatever you want. That's what we today consider selfish. Now, businessmen are selfish. They're out to make a profit. They're selfish in my view in the rational long-term sense. But when something like Enron happens, our morality comes up and says, see, told you so. That's what happens when you let them alone. When you leave them alone, they're going to cheat, lie, and steal. That's what selfish people do. You control them. And therefore, the immediate response was, that was a Bill O'Reilly show right after the Enron thing broke. And Bill O'Reilly wanted to put every CEO in America, he wanted to fire them all, but half of them in jail. And because Bill O'Reilly's a populist, and that's the sense he got from the American people. The reason everybody went like that is selfishness equals corruption. Businessmen are selfish, therefore businessmen are corrupt. And all Enron did was show, see, there it is. That's what happened. And that's what every time there's a failure, like they call it failure, who's blamed? Anybody who's profit-seeking, anybody who's perceived as being greedy, selfish, self-interested. They're the ones who are, and then you can take a few examples of really bad guys who in a truly capitalist market would be wiped out, or the government would go after them for fraud, like they would have with Enron. You take a few of those and you project them over the entire industry, over the entire world, and therefore you collapse capitalism. Therefore, if we're to defend capitalism, we have to de-link corruption from selfishness. We have to be able to defend selfishness as a virtue. My man has a book, I think it's outside, The Virtue of Selfishness. Selfishness as a virtue. Rational, long-term self-interest. Versus corruption, which is not selfish. Corruption is never selfish. Corruption is self-destructive. It hurts you. The guys from Enron are not enjoying the wealth that they stole, to the extent that they stole it, because they're in jail. One of them's dead. Bernie Madoff is in jail. These guys, and by the way, any one of these schemes, if you thought about it for just 10 minutes, you know you're going to end up in jail. There's no way to do the stuff that WorldCom did, for example, lie on its income statement over and over and over again and not get caught. At some point, you're going to get caught. Just think about it, and you know that. So what these people do, there's one thing to categorize all bad guys, and that is they don't think, they evade. Which is what John mentioned is the number one sin in objectivism, is evading. It's knowing that there's something there and not looking, not choosing to think, choosing not to think. That is a wisdom. That's what we need.